Well, folks, this is not good. Over the weekend, the United States had carried out airstrike attacks on 3 separate Iranian nuclear sites. Since then, President Donald Trump has announced that these strikes were successful in destroying these enrichment facilities, and to no one's surprise at all, Iran has already started retaliating by sending missiles at Israel, and we're getting word that these are just the start of retaliations. With this noteworthy spike in global tensions, the stock market is bracing for considerable impact, and we're also expecting to see crude oil absolutely skyrocket. As you can imagine, we have a lot to talk about, and that's exactly why in this video, I'll be breaking down all of the major news, what you should be paying attention to in the upcoming trading week, and then I really want to get into the 3 major reasons: the narrative, the technicals, and the options flow, putting those all together of why I think the overall market, the overall equities market, and the crypto market is about to take a pretty noteworthy hit. But obviously, before we get into all that, if you enjoyed these type of market breakdowns, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good jazz. With that being said, let's rock. Well, this is exactly the headline you don't want to be waking up to. According to the New York Times, the US enters a war against Iran. For those of you who might have missed out on some of the key details, the US strikes on Iran involved 125 aircrafts and a decoy. The US administration officials assess the impact of the attack on nuclear sites, while Iran signals little interest in diplomacy. More specifically, at least according to CNBC, US enters a war between Israel and Iran, and then this was quoted from President Trump himself: "We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites." For those of you who are curious, the president did give an entire press conference on this attack, but I think his own True Social update really summarizes the entire situation. "We have completed our very successful attacks on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs, all capitalized, was dropped on the primary site. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There's not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention on this matter." Now, to be honest, I do think it's a little interesting to say that now is the time for peace when really this is the highest global tensions have been in a hot minute. But even with all this happening, we're being told from the VP, this isn't war. US isn't at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. If you ask me, it's splitting hairs because I don't think that they're necessarily going to care. And in their minds, I think they would definitely think of this as war. With respect to the details from the strike, we're already getting conflicting information. Hexeth claims Iran's nuclear ambitions obliterated after US strikes, but from their side, they're saying, yes, we did sustain some damage, but everything is actually still functioning and we don't really have that much to worry about. Obviously, 2 opposite sides. We're going to find out soon enough who's telling the truth and who isn't. Regardless of the accuracy of these reports, it is already being used for retaliation. Iran says it reserves all options after outrageous US strikes, launches fresh attacks on Israel. Now, I don't want to be that guy, but I do believe it's going to get worse before it gets better because there's a lot of serious egos involved. Any retaliation by Iran against the US will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Thank you, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Like I said, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of egos involved in this situation, and I don't think it's going to be one of those things that simmers down in one night. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but obviously fingers crossed that this gets better as soon as it humanly can. Beyond Iran's clear intent to retaliate, they are making other moves as well. Iran's parliament officially approves closing the Strait of Hormuz for the first time since 1972. Folks, this is serious. If approved by Iran's top security body, shipments of 20 million barrels a day will be impacted. The Strait of Hormuz between Oman and Iran connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. This body of water controls 20% of the world's petroleum liquids consumption. In other words, 1/5 of the global oil consumption flows through there every day. With that being closed, we are fully expecting it to explode in price. To be clear, at the point that I'm filming this video, the futures market has yet to open, but we do have some tools at our disposal to get an idea of where markets might open. And according to the weekend oil specific to US crude, we are looking at a gap up of almost 9%. Folks, this is not going to be good. When oil goes up, that means the cost of a lot of production goes up. It's not going to help with inflation. And obviously, because global tensions are boiling over, we're also expecting to see a drop in the overall stock market. Yes, I'm looking at the US tech and it's expecting a drop of 1.25, but I have a feeling that it is kind of underappreciating how serious this situation is. Unfortunately, BTC is breaking down below this recent low, so that is a technical snap. The next support closer to 95,000, lower highs, lower lows, down about 2.5%. Hopefully at the time that you're watching this, things improve, but I have a feeling it's not going to. When I left you all on Friday, not only were we wrapping up the monthly OPEX, but also the quarterly OPEX. And yeah, the S&P 500 was pushing some recent lows, but in reality, things didn't look that rough. We closed only 3% below the all-time high, but then this leads me to think of where are we going? So as I said at the start of this video, let's talk about the narrative, let's talk about the technicals, and let's talk about the options flow. Obviously, the narrative is not good. Right now, it does not seem like Iran or the US really want to slow their roll. Like I said, too many egos in the room, so I don't think this is going to be an issue that is solved overnight. So the narrative, not good. Talking about the technicals, we're already seeing a technical breakdown in Bitcoin. We're seeing a technical breakout in oil, and then bringing our attention to the equities market. Yeah, we're at some lows, but I think when the futures market actually opens, we're going to have a gap down, and we might be talking about the lows in the end of May or closer to the middle of May, and that's really what I'll be watching for from a technical perspective. But what you need to know in the short term is clearly lower highs and lower lows. By definition, at least in the short term, that is clearly a bearish trend. So the technicals, not so good. And then this brings me really to more of a concerning thing than technicals is what is happening in the world of options. According to Spot Gamma, what we just had on Friday, that monthly/quarterly OPEX, also known as triple or quadruple witching, was the biggest one we've had in history. Now, if you look at what the option structure was really composed of, it was a lot of supportive Vanna and Charm. So I know we're starting to get into the weeds a little bit of these second and third order derivatives in the options market, but what you need to know is not only the pure size of this OPEX, but what was in that was supportive. It was a lot of bottom side support for the bulls that has now just disappeared. So all of a sudden, we are in this situation where we're getting bad global news, obviously global tensions boiling over. We're starting to see the early signs of a technical breakdown in price. And finally, and this might be the dagger in the heart scenario, is the fact that all this supportive options flow, it is gone. And barring the situation where all these big players come back and recreate the supportive flow, which really, why would they, given all the crazy news, I have big concerns of where the market might be going. Now, very quickly, to be clear here, I don't want to call for some doomsday massive 20, 30, 40% sell. I'm just saying in the next couple days, next couple weeks, I think it might pay a little bit more to be on the bearish side than the bullish side. I'm not calling for an overall stock market crash or anything like that, but I'm saying in the short term, I do believe it's a higher probability pathway that we go down than when we go up. Now, clearly, this is just one random guy's prediction, so please take it with a grain of salt, but I do know there are other things you should take into consideration, like the fact that we're going to be getting some PMI numbers on Monday. On Tuesday, Fed Chair will be testifying with consumer confidence coming out at the same time. He'll be testifying again on Wednesday. We're going to be getting the GDP report on Thursday, and we're going to be getting an inflation report on Friday. So yes, given all the craziness with the global macro situation, on top of that, every single trading day of the upcoming week, we have a major macroeconomic development that could shock the market. Additionally, there is a fair argument that maybe seasonality doesn't matter with all this craziness, but on top of it, we are in a portion of the year where the final-ish week of June seasonally is bearish. Is it the most bearish week we've ever seen? No, and there is an argument that seasonality doesn't matter with this, but there are, for whatever reason, downside pressures until we get to the exact end of June. This is based on the last 30 years worth of data. If you're more curious about recent data, as in the last 5 years, yeah, June as a whole has been a bullish month. But when you start to look at the weekly, you're realizing that we are going into a slight bearish week. So I just want to call that out. I would be the first person to tell you seasonality is not the end all be all, but it is something that you should be paying attention to. Quick side note, we're not really in earnings season, but you might care about Carnival, FedEx, Micron, or Nike. Just wanted to call those out to you. And if you're curious about all this stuff in like a one-stop shop, the seasonality, the macroeconomic events, and really all of the earnings, right here at macKohrs.locals.com. It's 100% free, has always been free. I break down the week. I tell you what earnings might be interested in here. I give you all the major macroeconomic events and then seasonality for each individual day. Like I said, it's a little cheat sheet for the upcoming trading week of things you should probably be paying attention to. It's always been free, always will be free, macKohrs.locals.com. So to wrap this all up, my main message to you folks is buckle up. I do not have a crystal ball that tells me if the market's going to go up or going to go down, but putting all these puzzle pieces together, I do believe it's more likely that the market goes down before it goes up. I'm by no means calling for some doomsday catastrophic market sell-off, but I do believe that there's more bearish pressure than there is bullish pressure, and I'm expecting in the short term a decline in the market until we get some sort of positive development, such as the fact that the US and Iran stop fighting, such as the fact that Iran and Israel stop fighting. If we got that stuff, great. I'm ready to ride this back up. But until then, when I see these technical breakdowns and more so of bearish option flow, well, putting those three things together tells me that it is a higher probability pathway, by no means a guarantee to make money to the downside than to the upside, of course, unless you are looking at the world of black gold, aka oil. I would love to get your thoughts in a comment below. If not, I'll catch you in the live stream Monday to Friday, 9 to 11. Hope to see you there. Peace.